Hello and welcome to the ESL Teaching Podcast. I'm your host, Yeva Grossless, otherwise known as Simply Yeva, and I am so thankful that you tuned in. I'm looking forward to sharing both my knowledge and experience on this podcast, as well as that of my fellow teachers. Hi, Amber.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's so good to see you again.
Likewise. I'm so happy. You were a guest at my ESL Teacher Summit, and now you're a guest on the ESL Teaching Podcast, and I'm super thrilled to have you.
Thank you.
For those of you who don't know who Amber is, and I don't know who you are, but because I think everybody knows you, I wanted to do a short introduction. Amber is a full-time kindergarten teacher and teacher burnout coach. After struggling with burnout for most of her teaching career, in 2016, Amber created Burned In Teacher. Now she uses her podcast, book, and online course and community to coach teachers through her 8-step Burned In process to help them use burnout as an opportunity for growth so they can live a more fulfilled career and life. And I think you're speaking to so many teachers.
And I'm actually speaking to myself too.
Isn't it funny how we create what we need most and then we want to share with people in hopes that we will help them? That's how I created my Simply Yeva. I needed so many things, and I'm like, you know what? Let me just go through the process and see how it works. And, here it is, sharing with the world. And you have the same thing,
Yes. Yeah. I think, that's what makes us really naturally wonderful teachers too, is we want to share what we learn, share what we know, and share what we know what works, we want to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's begin with all the questions. And
sure.
As I tell all my guests, I have a couple of questions that I ask everybody. So it's the first and the last question. Okay. So
sure.
First one is, tell us a little bit of your backstory. How did you decide to become a teacher?
How did I decide to create Burned In Teacher? Is that what you said?
To become a teacher and to create
to become a teacher. Oh my goodness. Okay. So my journey to become a teacher is kind of a short and sweet one. I never was one of those kids that grew up knowing what they wanted to do. For a long time there, I thought I just wanted to work with horses because I was really lucky and had horses when I was growing up, but I didn't really ever have like a solid plan on what I wanted to do. And my decision to become a teacher was really in a moment of necessity. I needed to decide quickly. I am a teenage mom. My husband and I, we got pregnant with our oldest daughter when I was a senior in high school, and he was a freshman at Purdue University. And I needed to make a decision. We decided we were going to continue our dreams of becoming college bound and creating, sustainable careers for ourselves. So I was just like, okay, I've been a student. I've seen what teachers do. I can just be a teacher. So, and actually that was after a failed attempt to become a nurse. So I really thought that I would want to be, work with people in a hospital. And, I missed getting into nursing school after my first semester by like 1/100th of a point. It was like something crazy, but really, honestly, it was a blessing in disguise, because in those panic situations, I'm sure I could, do better as I got better at being a nurse, but I just lose my mind. Like when in those life and death situations, like I've, been in a few of, maybe not that serious, but in a few serious situations. And I'm like, I can't think. And nurses have to be like, ready to give orders and do the right thing. And that just wasn't, that's not my strength. So, it really, it really was good for everybody involved. So that's when I was like, you know what, I'll just go into education. And it turned out to be such a huge passion of mine. And I, obviously that's what I still do today. Part of my Burned In teacher journey and my burnout story is that I have left teaching twice. But I can allude more into that later. But so I started teaching, got my first classroom, my own classroom in 2007. And I started my career in first grade.
Oh, how cool is that? So first of all,
yeah,
it's very interesting to see because I wanted to be a doctor. when I
Mm.
that was my, like, I had two passions. I had like English language and literature, but I also
Hmm.
come from a medical family. So it's like, I'm going to be a doctor. And then I
Yeah.
realized for you, it was life and death situations. For me, it was chemistry. I didn't want to kill anybody. You
Mm.
know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
you would not be.
Chemistry was a killer. That was actually my very first class that I walked into. My very first day of college was chemistry, and I was a nervous wreck.
Yeah.
It was so hard. It was so
Yeah.
hard.
But there are so many parallels though. And I think I'm already repeating myself because I told somebody in another episode, but there's so many parallels. Doctors help people, like nurses help
Yeah.
people, teachers help people, right? So
Yes.
we had this deep-seated need to help, to teach, to care for somebody. And,
Yeah.
thank goodness there are more fields than just one, to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Being in the service industry is the best. And before I was even, when I was in college getting my degree, one of my favorite jobs I've ever had, I worked at Texas Roadhouse and I was a server. And I have said so many times, I will do that again. I love waiting tables. It is so fun to me to be able, because I'm up and around and bopping around, helping people, making them happy. And that's what I love to do.
Oh, that is so awesome. So you are a kindergarten teacher. I want to hear
I
more
am.
now. After hearing
Yeah,
you, like I have all these questions,
sure.
but you said you were first grade and then now you're a kindergarten teacher, and then
Hmm.
you left education twice and then you
Yes.
came back. Like
Return twice.
all the things, okay? And then we're gonna
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, yeah. So I will make it short and sweet. So like I said, I got my very first classroom in 2007. I taught first, second, then third grade. And that was over a span of 8 years in that building, in that district. And then in 2015, I left for 6 months and returned back into the classroom. And I'll give you more details on that transition in just a little bit. And then I left and went to a new district, new school, and started in first grade again and stayed there for 3 years and then left again. And then I worked on Burn In Teacher and did Google training for 3 years from home. And then last year, 21-22, I returned to the same district that I left the second time, and different building, different grade level. So this is my second year teaching kindergarten. And it is by far my favorite. I
Oh,
love it
really?
so much.
I
Yes.
I cannot even. I think the
I never thought.
so
I
cute.
never thought.
I just
Yeah.
want to like play with them. I don't think I could discipline a kindergartner. They're so damn.
They are so cute. And it's so fun. And I tell people I just get to sing and dance all day. It's the best job ever.
Well,
But
Texas
I
Roadhouse is
never,
coming back.
yeah, I never, ever, ever thought in my career that I would number one, want to try to teach kindergarten. Because
Mhm.
where do you even start? Like we joke, like they come in and they're like feral cats. Like they
Yeah.
have no idea what to do, where to go. So they just do whatever and they go wherever. And
Yeah.
but it is by far, it is the best job.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah, so that's where I am now, and I'm, we're a little over halfway through my second year of teaching kindergarten, and I have, for the first time ever in my career, I'm like, I'm happy here. I don't want to move up. I'm not trying to leave. I am just really content, and this is my 14th year teaching. This is the first time in my entire career that I have felt that contentment, where I haven't felt like, what's next? How do I get out of here?
Yeah.
And that says a lot about, what I built with Burned In Teacher, because I really do practice what I preach. And I've had to work a lot on my mindset and my habits and my beliefs and my goals, even because I'm a goal setter. I move the goalposts all the time. And that can be a good thing, but could also be really detrimental. And for me, it was really detrimental
Mhm.
because nothing ever seemed to be good enough for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so if you'd like, I can quickly give you insight
So
into
that
why I
was
left.
yeah, so that was my
Yeah.
next question is, like how did you start? Why did you start? When did you start? And
Yeah.
tell us a little bit more about Burned In Teacher.
Sure. So Burn In Teacher, I actually started when I was in 2016, when I was in my second district. And I started it because I was so sick and tired of feeling so isolated, so alone, so miserable, crying to and from school.
Mhm.
And it wasn't just that school, it was the school before. And I just started to notice a lot of patterns. And this was of course after the first time I left and came back. Um, previous to Burned In Teacher, a couple of years previous in 2014. And if you've listened to my podcast, if you go to Burned In Teacher podcast, if you go to burnedinteacher.com and click on podcast, go to episode 1, where I share my extremely embarrassing, but really eye-opening rock bottom moment where I did have a really embarrassing mental and emotional breakdown in front of my teacher friends. And there were 9 of them. So it wasn't just like one, it was an entire team.
Yeah.
I was the grade level leader, by the way. And I went home to let my dog out. He was a puppy at that time, and he had crapped all over his kennel. He had laid in it, rolled in it. And I had like 20 minutes to clean him up, clean myself up. And after years of struggle and just push and pull in my brain and challenges with my administration and some team members, and the stories I was telling myself, it just all came to a head. And that instance with Oliver really was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I just had a complete and total emotional breakdown. I was in such a terrible state when I got to school on that September day, that people thought that my husband, who taught in the same building for many years with all of us, they thought that he had died. Like, I was that hysterical. So imagine their underwhelm whenever I tell them that Oliver pooped in his kennel, and I was upset because I had to clean himself up and me up. Like, that's really underwhelming. That is a very dramatic response. But what I've learned through my research is that is a very normal response when you have been under so much pressure and stress, and you're feeling those feelings of burnout over and over and over and over and over again, and you keep shoving it down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I did. And that is why I am such a huge advocate for mental health, for therapy, for my program that I've built, my book, all of these things, because we have teachers who are working with children that are feeling the things that I used to feel.
Yeah.
And not only is that bad for kids, that is a terrible way to live your life. I've been there, and I get goosebumps and I almost get emotional this is 8 years later. And
Yeah.
it has stuck with me as one of the most pivotal moments in my life, because that was the day that I realized that something truly had to change. And in my case, there were 2 things that had to change. When you're faced with burnout, you have 2 things. You have to change one or both. I had to change myself.
Yeah.
And in that case, I needed to change my environment. So I had to change both of those things. For some people, they just need to change themselves. For other people, they just need to change their environment because they are working in a toxic workplace and they've tried everything and they've worked on themselves. So I left. I left a couple of months later. I took what I thought was a really great position as an executive director of a nonprofit in our local community. And me not being in a business, I taught first, second, third grade.
Yeah.
I didn't realize what a financial hole that they were in. And I was there long enough to close it. So not only did I feel like I had failed as a teacher and left, mid-year, I felt like I had failed publicly. And it looked like, and it really wasn't, but it really looked like it was my fault. It looked like, oh, Amber came in and the place shut down, So it was very embarrassing and on multiple levels. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go back to the classroom. And although I had started reading some personal development books and really had started to, kind of try some new things, I really still was definitely not at the place that I am now. But I still went back to the classroom, different district, different grade level, feeling very broken, feeling like a failure, feeling like this is it for me, which is, I know, not true. But then I was like, this is it for me. And not to speak negatively about teaching, but like I kept having this pull that I was meant to do something else. And I just I was over 30 years old and I was like, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Like, come on, Amber, get it together. Like I kept having those conversations with myself. And then in 2016, I went to a Google conference down in Franklin, Indiana. They used to have those Google summits around the country and the world, really, but the Google Education Summits. And I was I was struck with such inspiration for the teachers that were standing up in front of groups of teachers and just delivering really inspiring and action-based messages. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that to a room of people. I want to inspire people the way that those people are inspiring me. And for me, that first step was saying, I want to get Google certified. I want to become a Google certified educator, maybe a trainer. And then I learned about this thing called Google Innovator. And I was like, heck yeah, sign me up. I want to try this. I don't know if I'll get in, but so I started what reignited me was this idea of like, I could help other teachers with this technology And I could really, that is what just really ignited that fire again. And on the way home from the conference, I had fallen asleep on the way home, and I woke up and burned in teacher was just in my mind, because it was the opposite of how I felt when I went. I actually did not want to go, but my husband was like, you're going to go with some teachers from different buildings in the district. You're going to meet some new people. Go, just get away and have fun. And I actually, one of my very first burn in teacher students was my roommate on that weekend, on that, at that conference. She's still a very dear friend. And I call her the BITOG, because she was the first person that I took her one-to-one through this process.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I started doing some Google training. I built a course through Google Classroom that I started to teach online, and I started to get contacted by districts and schools here in Indiana. And they wanted me to come and teach their teachers how to use Google. And I had to say no a lot because I was a full-time teacher. Yeah. And so one day in winter of 2018, excuse me, I talked to my husband. Hold on one second. I talked to my husband and I said, you know what, instead of saying no to all of these opportunities, what if I said yes? Yeah. And he was like, what do you mean? Like, he was automatically like, what are you talking about? He's like, are you going to quit teaching again? And I was like, yes, but it's not because I don't enjoy teaching. It's because I have all these things I want to do with Burned In Teacher. I want to start interviewing people. I want to start a podcast. I have this process I want to build, and I'm getting hired to do all of these trainings at school. So I think it might be a good trade-off. Mm-hmm. And so he was like, you go, if you think you can do it, then I think you can do it. Let's go for it. So I turned in my resignation letter. It really was 100% honestly because I wanted to go burn in teacher full time. I wanted to do the Google training. And that's what I did. I spent 3 years at home. I wrote my book. I built my course. I built a community. I Google trained until 2020, when everybody needed to use Google essentially, right, for teaching virtually. And they didn't need that training from me anymore. Yeah. And they really did learn by necessity. And really, Google training wasn't my passion anymore. It really was doing what I do now with Burn In Teacher. So that was my story that's the beginning of my story of how I left the second time and returned the second time. Is after, especially even before the pandemic, I had worked at home for 2 years or a year and a half, and I really started to get that itch. I really started to miss being around teachers and students and hearing the buzz of the classroom and walking down the hallway. And like, I just love to be up and around. I'm an extrovert. Like, I love to be up and around and surrounded by people. And so that first year and a half was really nice. And I used every minute that I could of those working days to do my very best to build Burn In Teacher. And then it was spring of 2021. So the end of the 2020-21 school year, I told my husband, I said, there's a kindergarten position open in your district. So it's the district that he works in. Yeah. He and I both work in the same district. So it was the same district that I left after the second time I left. And I said, there's a kindergarten position open in this school. I said, I think I'm going to apply for it. He goes, are you crazy? He was like, you left twice. Why? You seriously want to go back? And I said, I do. I really do. I miss the classroom. And so I applied, I got to interview, and a few days later, I was a kindergarten teacher, and I could not be happier. I really do love what I do with 100% of my heart. I really do.
You know what I like from what I'm hearing is I love one thing is that, first of all, you had challenges, but you're kind of like, you looked into yourself as opposed to like, this person is bad. You're making me, one of my least favorite phrases, you're making me do that. Nobody ever makes you do anything, right? And the other thing, and you're speaking my language. Exactly. So, you're making me mad. You made me do this. Like, yeah, we can talk about this. But the other thing is that how many of us live in fear of what other people will think, right? Mm-hmm. And you had, you left the school district, you went into a nonprofit. It was not very successful. We are half the time we don't do things we think we want to do because we're afraid of what others will think. We're afraid to even acknowledge to ourselves what, brings light into our life. And
Yeah.
I think I really admire the fact that you're like, okay, this is not working. Let me try this. Oh, well, this didn't work out either. Let me try this. And I'm going to do
Yeah.
this and I'm going to do that. And, it's really, really, truly, truly inspiring. Because as I'm
Thank you.
building my business, I'm looking at all the people. I want to inspire people. You know what I mean? It's not
Mhm.
easy to do when you're
It's
full.
not. And it's messy.
Yes,
Yeah, it's messy. It's messy. And you fail all over the place and you fail in front
absolutely.
of people. And I think, when I was so embarrassed and feeling like a failure there in 2015, when I, went back into the classroom after leaving the first time, I was so ashamed. I was so embarrassed. And now I look back and I'm so grateful for that failure because I don't look at it as a failure anymore. I look at it as I tried something
Yeah,
and it didn't work out that time. But it took me to this district that had all this technology, and it took me to this place where I was able to go to that conference
yeah,
that gave me that inspiration. I wouldn't have gotten that at the other district. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to go to that conference. So what would have happened?
yeah,
What would have happened if I would have stayed?
yeah,
I wouldn't be the person or the teacher that I am today.
yeah,
And that all comes from really understanding and embracing this beautiful thing that is life.
yeah,
Like I have this one life to live, and I have chosen not to live it scared. I'm going to really dig deep into what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking and what I'm believing. I'm going to ask myself if those things are true, if they are or not, and I'm going to decide what my next best step is. And that's what Burned In Teacher is all about. It's not about keeping teachers in the classroom. It's not about getting you out of the classroom.
yeah,
It's about getting you out of that rock bottom place where you feel like you have no power,
yeah,
because that's where I was. And that's where I don't wish that place or those feelings on anybody. We all deserve so much more. And like you just said, like no one can make us do anything. And vice versa, we can't make anybody else do anything. We
yeah,
are only 100% responsible for us and our choices and our
yeah,
words and our beliefs. And that's what Burned In Teacher it was built to do, is to help you to believe yourself and to
yeah.
believe in yourself and your ability to make the changes necessary for you to live your happiest and best life, because the alternative is to
Yeah,
live a miserable life,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And I'm here to say, like, sometimes leaving teaching is not the best option for
yeah.
people, because I've left twice and I've returned twice. So I'm like the poster child for, yeah, for some people, it is the best thing to leave education. But for other people, it's not. It just needs to be, there needs to be a shift somewhere.
So this is the perfect segue. I have like so many comments and so many questions and everything, but I wanted to say one comment and I'm going to move into the process.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started I realized that in order for me to be able to show up as the best version of me, right, at work and at home and everywhere else, because I too have like all this circus over there, going on. I did have to swallow some hard truths, because you
Mm-hmm.
have to look at yourself and I'm like, wait, it's me, I'm the problem. Okay, so
Yeah. It's like
that
that
that was
Taylor Swift song, right?
exactly, that is exactly
Yes.
it. But one of the things that stuck with me and that has helped me through so many ways, and that I share with students now, is failure. There's no such thing as failure. It's only like feedback of what didn't work. And
Right.
and I tell my students that all the time, and I visibly, like, I can feel like the shoulders, go down, and everybody's like, okay, all right, well, I can do this. But
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
brings me to that first step, right? So the first step to any healing or solving any problem is awareness and
Mm.
acknowledgement of where we are, right? So
Yeah.
let's say I'm aware of the fact that I'm burned out, but I really have no idea how to even tackle it. What would be
Right.
the first step, or what is the most frequent piece of advice you give someone who's burned out?
Yeah. So I actually, number one, I say it out loud. Own it. You are where you are. You're not a bad person. You're not crazy. Say
Yep.
it. I'm burned out. And that's something that I refused to say out loud. Like, it was just in my head. Like, I was like, I can't tell anybody about it, but everybody could see by my actions and my words that that's what the case was, but I just wasn't owning up to it. And what I did there is I put the responsibility on everybody else
Yes.
to fix all of my problems. And therefore, I didn't have to fix anything. The responsibility wasn't on me. And I say all the time, burnout is not your fault, but it is your responsibility, because no one else is going to come in and save you. You have to save yourself. So own it. And actually look at that as a win. Like, okay, this is where I am right now. And the first step in the burned in process is begin where you are. So what I tell people to do next is I have a free quiz that helps you to identify your teacher burnout type, because not all burnout is created equal. We are all different personalities, different goals, different habits, different everything, different backgrounds, different. It could not be. This is why I get so frustrated with like the self-care talk, because it's got like a negative connotation now, because we think if we just throw everybody in a room and say we're going to do yoga or we're going to meditate, that's self-care. That self-care is great if you're ready for it, but what's good for Eva is not good for Amber, and vice versa.
Yep.
So the first thing we have to do is figure out, what type are you? Are you burned and over it? Are you like I was the first time that I left teaching? I was burned and over it because I was surrounded by such negativity and apathy and a volatile relationship with my administration. And that was just so unhealthy for me, because I continued to blame them. They continued to blame me. They blamed each other. There was no conversation. It was just all of this negativity just thrown around. There was negativity in my team. And it just wasn't a healthy place for any teacher to thrive. And so that's where I was. And it could be negativity and apathy from your students, right? It could be from your team. It could be that your principal is great, but the team that you've been placed with is super negative. That was my case. My very first 2 years of teaching, I was with a terribly toxic team in that building. You could be burned and unbalanced, which is where a lot of teachers find themselves. That is where they have so much to do, not enough time to do it. We all know that there's no possible way to do this job of teaching within our contract hours. But they take that to an extreme. Like, they are working 60, 70 plus hours a week. They're grading everywhere. They're planning all the time. Like, weekends are non-existent, and missing soccer games and things like that for, working on school, etc. So that's burned and unbalanced. You could be burned and bored. And I've been there too, where you have great systems, you have great relationships, everything, quote unquote, should be fine. You got it all together. Well, why am I feeling so unsatisfied then? Why do I feel so discontent? Like I had in 2016, I had this pull that I was like, I love teaching. I really do. But I kind of, maybe not bored by it, but I need a challenge.
Yeah.
I need some sort of challenge, a healthy challenge that's going to help me grow. And that's actually one of these essential pieces of growing that we leave out a lot, is that need for growth. Our nails grow, our skin grows, our hair grows, our spirit grows too. And our desire to learn continues to grow, especially as teachers. So you're just looking for a challenge. So, okay, is that a change in grade level? Is it just a change in the way you're doing things in your classroom? Is it a change in schools? Do you want to go get your master's and become a counselor or teach ESL, or, what is it that you can do to create that much needed challenge for growth there? And then of course you could come out on the other end as not burned out, but something's off. So maybe you had a new baby, maybe your administration changed, something changed that you maybe haven't really taken time to notice, because there's like literally no time to like reflect on anything, especially if you don't know how or what. Yeah. So you could just need to stop and really think about, okay, how long have I been feeling this way? When did this start? And what kind of triggers what is triggering me to really start to feel the stress and the overwhelm or the frustration. And I lay all of those things out in that first step, both in the book and in the course. So it really is kind of backing up, looking behind you and saying, how did I get here?
Yes.
Because that's what I didn't do. I didn't do that. I always had my blinders on looking forward and ignoring all of this stuff that had happened or that was happening. And I just kept my blinders on and ignored it. And that's where that essentially where that breakdown came, is because those things catch up with you.
Yeah,
We are not machines. We can't just keep going, going, going. We have to stop and own it and really, really pay attention to those things that are going on, both behind us and around us, so that we can focus forward with clarity.
yeah. I feel like I went through all of these burnout mini spurts just in this year alone. So,
Mm-hmm.
but because I'm aware and, like because I'm aware, I'm like, okay, this is, what can I do? What can
Yeah.
I do? I can come home, and I've had breakdowns like you, maybe not at work, maybe once,
Mm-hmm.
quietly in a conference room. But,
Yeah. We all have a story like that. Yeah.
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 So, but again, do I want to leave? Do I want to stay? It took me, quite a bit of time. And this is a public podcast, and I'm
Yeah.
still working. But I think that I'm talking and you're talking to so many teachers who are questioning, because like I work with older students. I love them dearly.
Mm-hmm.
The inability to focus and the apathy and the behavior issues are a real problem this year, that you can meditate, do yoga, do whatever self-care you can. You go and you're
Yeah.
like, what is happening? So
Yes.
it's so many things,
It is.
yeah. So I wanted to ask you, so let's say the teacher is, let's bring us back to the school. Okay, so we want to
Mm-hmm.
talk about let's collaboration and the atmosphere in your team. Okay, so
Yeah.
it can be a beautiful dance, professionals, who work together to help students and the greater community, and that is my dream. And I feel like, I have two other ladies that work in my department, and we get along well, but I'll be honest, we are all overwhelmed. I
Yeah.
thank the Lord for Google Meet, because we would not be able to meet. We're all in different buildings. We each have two schools. And so we try to support each other. We try to support, to see, I can help you with this, what do you need? And for us, it works. And if somebody
Mm-hmm.
wants to ask a question, we can ask a question. Because we're the only professionals, the ESL professionals in the school, it's kind of like a survival tactic, because
Yeah.
nobody else will understand what we do. But there are many situations where teachers are unable to establish rapport with their colleagues. And for
Yeah.
example, for us, collaboration is essential in order for our students to succeed. We have to collaborate. Again, I left a district that was toxic, and I came to where I am now. And I'm so thankful that the growth mindset is
Yeah.
there as a,
Good for you.
policy,
Yeah. Yeah.
but there are all kinds of situations. So due to various reasons, from unreasonable work expectations to personality clashes, right? What are
Sure.
your best tips for collaborating and maybe creating the rapport with other colleagues?
Yeah, really, really good question. So again, going back to what we've already stated, and the biggest truth of all is that we cannot control other people.
Yep.
And I think going into any situation where we're working with humans, which is all we do in education,
All the
is
time.
we have to go in with an open heart and an open mind to know that really, truly, today, in this moment, when we are getting together to collaborate, we are all doing the best we can with what we have today.
Yes.
And our best today may not be what our best is tomorrow, and our best tomorrow may not be what it was 4 days ago. We are pushed and pulled in so many directions, and this applies to our children too in our classrooms, whether they're little like mine or big like yours. Everyone is coming with their own personal baggage and their own personal way of handling them, or rather not handling them. So I think something that we do as self-proclaimed people pleaser control freaks that teachers are, is that we take everything personally, and we want to please everybody. So when someone comes in and they're not behaving or talking or collaborating the way that we feel like they should, we take it personally. We take it as a personal attack. And I think that that's one thing that we can truly choose to look at differently. And one way that we can do that is we can walk into, let's say we're going in to collaborate, and I've had this happen before, where nobody really, it turns into a venting session rather than a planning and collaboration session, which is a lot. It happened so much to me in one particular team that I was working in. And what I chose to do for a long time was say nothing. I didn't engage in their, like I did for a while. And then I just decided this is not healthy. This is toxic. This is not helpful. So I remained silent. I didn't say anything for a while. And finally one day, the current team lead, she said, I don't even know what we can talk about today. We're forced to sit here together. And I said, well, what do we have coming up? What is something that we can work on together? Does anybody have any ideas? Like I just I spoke up, but I didn't speak up to what she was saying, with that negative, that negativity. I kind of turned the boat a little bit and I said, well, what's coming up? What do you all need help with? And at first it was silence. And then we started talking, like somebody brought up, I can't remember exactly, to be completely honest. I can't remember what somebody brought up, but we ended up having a really good conversation on what it was that we could do to prepare for this one certain thing. So I think whenever you decide to speak up, we should always, always seek to understand before trying to be understood. Yes. And that for me kind of goes into the second step of the burned in process, which is understand your teacher brand. And I can tell you with 100% confidence, until I was 33 years old, I had no self-awareness. None.
How much later?
None. Yeah. And I was, and I've talked vaguely about my childhood, but I was basically taught to be the victim in a situation of confrontation, and that I need to make it all about me. And, it's everybody else's problem and all of that. So those were thought habits that I had to really train myself to stop, because those are not healthy for me or anybody else. And so I really I really started to really seek to understand what other people's needs were before I barged in and said, this is what I need. Yeah. And that's applicable in so many situations. Even though collaboration is not confrontational, sometimes it can become so. And in those situations of potential confrontation, when you're sitting down for a hard conversation with your principal or another teammate, one-to-one, seeking to understand, like, hey, can you help me understand why I heard this? Can you help me understand what you meant by that? Or in this situation that I wasn't there, can you help me understand what happened? Because I would really like to clear this up, rather than going into every situation thinking that we know everything, because we don't, or that we have all of the answers, because many times we don't. A lot of our answers are based on our own bias, based on our own experiences. And that doesn't mean it's always the best answer. There are so many different ways to get to one point, right? So I think letting go of some of that ego is really, really important. And you don't even have to say this out loud, but if you're collaborating and someone says, well, it says, I'm doing it this way. And not everybody has the same mentality that maybe you do, but saying in your head, I really like what she's saying here, but I think I'm going to put my own little personal spin on it, because who's going to know unless you announce it to everybody? Who's going to know?
Exactly.
Nobody. Your kids are going to know, but they're not going to know any different. Yeah. So I think sometimes we, as teachers, we want to share every single minute detail of everything that we're doing, because we want that gold star. We want to help other people. But what's helpful for us is not helpful for other people. So there's some self-awareness there. There's some ego involved. There's some bias that we have to really move through and identify in ourselves first, so that we can more constructively move into those collaboration situations or those confrontational situations that could potentially turn really ugly if we're not careful. Absolutely. About how we present ourselves.
This is such great advice, and it's so true. We all come in, and even like, honestly, you come home, for example, right? You come home and it's like you're tired, and let's say your husband is tired, and you both come from two different worlds, and you think one thing, but it really is just like, I don't know, I'm hungry, he's hungry. You know what I mean? But we deal with it differently. And it's the same at school. Somebody comes in, the students come in, like they're tired. Okay. So it's not that they're lazy, right? Maybe something happened.
Right. Maybe, yeah.
The colleague wants to snap, like, oh, I wonder what's going on. Maybe I can help, or maybe,
Yeah.
maybe they need something, or
Yeah.
maybe you just need to remove yourself from that situation to compose yourself, because some
Right.
days you feel ungrounded too.
Well, here's a perfect example, Ava, is that if you were having a terrible day, let's say, I don't know. So let's say just something bad happened at home. Maybe you have a couple of kids and they both woke up puking and your husband decided to stay home, but it was just a chaotic morning. Okay. It just did not start. You were up all night with these kids, but you came to school, he stayed home with them, whatever, or vice versa, right? He or she. And let's say you go in, you are already flustered, you're tired,
Yes.
and your principal barges into your classroom, maybe not barges, but comes in and just, doesn't even pay attention to your signals, to your face, to your cues. They don't pay attention to any of that, but they come in and ask you a question and you respond in a way that's maybe not typical. And they don't say anything. They just get snippy back.
Yes.
Like, how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
It makes you feel unseen. It only adds to your frustration, and it's only going to make your emotions even more heightened, because now you feel like you're being like attacked or labeled by your principal, and he or she has no idea what happened to you at home that day.
Yeah.
The exact same thing happens with our students every single day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's a huge piece of this behavior puzzle that sometimes we miss.
Yep.
Is that, yes, our job is to teach them when they come to school, but we know from many experiences that our students don't always come. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't come to school ready to learn on a particular day.
Yeah.
And we're humans interacting with humans every single day. And I know it might not be in our job description, but we're in the service industry and we are there to serve kids. We can't, if their needs, their most basic needs are not being met that day, they're not going to learn, no matter how quickly we get to the topic of discussion or how quickly we get to our I can statement or our standard for the day. Like, we have to notice those changes in them and say, hey, what's up? You didn't come in like you normally come in. Are you okay? Like, that's what you'd want from your principal. Yeah. Hey, wait a minute. Are you okay? That's 3 words. Are you okay? Yes. 3 words that can make a world of difference, because, okay, gosh, you see me.
Yes.
You see me. Like, obviously things are not okay, so now you can say, oh my gosh, my kids were up all night. They were puking. Jeff stayed home with them today, but I'm exhausted. And you wouldn't believe what, like, now you've got a conversation and now we have that connection. And maybe they can say, in an ideal world, they would say, oh my gosh, that has happened to me before. I am so sorry. Yeah. Now we're piling this interaction with empathy rather than urgency and panic and frustration, So that really, and that's where, again, I can't expect that from other people. But I know that I can model that.
Yes.
I can model that for my students. I can model that to other teachers. And oh my gosh, this is opening up Pandora's box on this whole process that I teach, because this is multi-layered with like, okay, you've started to work on yourself. And now if people are starting to cross your boundaries for what you will and will not tolerate, how do we have those conversations? Because they need to be had. And how do we have those constructive conversations? Because they have to happen.
Yes. Absolutely.
So it really does kind of snowball on each other. And it's a really great question. So I hope I didn't take too long to answer it.
I feel like you have to come back and we'll talk about an episode on boundaries. Because teaching is a unique profession where it's expected that you will not have boundaries.
Right.
It's implicitly expected, that you're gonna do what's in your contract, but the contract does not provide for hours. You're gonna do all.
Can I give you an example? Okay. So today, actually, one reason that my hair is still wet when we're jumping on screen today to record this podcast episode is because I had an initial IEP conference that started at 2:30 today. And I think in hindsight, I really should have asked the question, is this going to be enough time to be done by contract hours at 3:30? Because I knew it was going to be extensive. It didn't end until 4, and it went a half an hour past my contract hours. And I'm not like negative and mad about it, but I did have something important that I needed to prepare for afterwards. It wasn't that I was just going to sit on the couch and watch Netflix, which if I wanted to do that, I have the right to, because
to do that.
my contract hours end at 3:30, but it wasn't one of those things that it just like wasn't a big deal. I didn't really have anything to do.
Yeah.
It was, I wanted to be prepared for you.
Yeah.
And so I will not lie, when the clock struck 3:40 and then 3:45 and then 3:50, I was like, this is not okay with me. Was I negative and nasty about it? Absolutely not. Did I say anything about this time? Nope, I sure didn't, because what's it going to change? Nothing. But what I will do in the future, if I have another initial IEP meeting in the future with another student and they try to make the time 2:30, I will politely ask that it be moved to 2 or earlier, because in my experience, they last longer than an hour and my contract time is at 3:30 and I need to be leaving at that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a boundary.
It is a boundary. Yeah.
It's a healthy, it's a time, that's a time boundary. And that's just one that's just one type of boundary. And we struggle with time boundaries the most as teachers, but I can't be mad at other people for not respecting boundaries that I don't set in the first place.
True.
Now, in this case, I didn't really know that it was going to last that long, and I didn't really think about it, but I learned a lesson here. And now that I know better, next time I can do better.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this. I love this. So you have a Burned-in Teacher University, okay? So
yes.
You're a full-time teacher and
yes.
you're a business owner. Now, how
yes.
do you balance it all without burning out? This is a personal interest to me.
Yeah.
I have a business and I work full time. I'm trying to.
We could talk about this for a while, because I will not lie. It's very hard to balance. And actually, my husband and I just had this conversation this morning, that I do work a lot. I do work a lot. Yeah. And I really don't typically work. I have such great systems in my classroom and great boundaries in my teaching job, my 7:30 to 3:30 teaching job, that I don't bring school home with me really ever. For the first time last week, 2 weeks ago, I did for like maybe 45 minutes, but I don't bring work home with me from school. But Burned-in Teacher is my baby. Like I birthed this whole program and this business from nothing. And I know that I have to show up every day. And as you know, just like teaching, being a CEO of a business, you wear so many hats. And I do have help, but I don't have enough. So actually, one of the things on my to-do list is I need to bring somebody else on the team to help me, because I know that I could do so much more with more help. Yeah. So there are definitely, I'm not perfect. Like my main reason for telling you this is I'm not perfect. And I am in a special situation that maybe other people aren't, who have online businesses or brick and mortar businesses outside of teaching. My kids are older. Our oldest is 21. She's in college. Our youngest is 14. She's a freshman. So I don't have littles at home anymore. So I'm able to be a little bit more flexible with my time, and, like doing this interview with you this evening. But it's still hard. Like for me to sit down and relax without, grabbing my phone and sending some emails or posting some things on social media, or looking at my to-do list for tomorrow, or having my computer out, typing up my plans for the upcoming podcast that I'm batching, or communicating with my team. Like the thing is that I'm not mad about it. I love it. But it causes some friction with my husband, because we do love to hang out, and I love to hang out with our daughter who's still at home. So I would be worried about burning out if it was drudgery and I hated doing it. Right. But I don't. And I see so much potential from the work that I'm putting in now to help more teachers and more schools around the world. And so to me, it's worth it. And I love to work. I love to work so much.
I can relate to this 100,000%. Yeah. I don't bring work home unless it's like unless I have to. I try to stay maybe like a half hour over, just so I can, because I run around all day. I'm between two
Right.
schools and I'm with kids all day. So staying a half hour over, for me, it's my boundary, because I need to just kind of like come down a little bit and
Yeah.
just see, okay, like this is what I'm doing tomorrow. And this is how I'm going to go about this. Because
Yes.
when I come home, now I redid my office. So now it's like the only place you
It's
can find me at
beautiful,
home is
by the way.
here.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting, and like you said, because it's a love, it's the fruit of your passion, it's your love,
Yes.
it's the desire to help. And the fact that when you hear people come back to you, they come back to you and they say, oh, I never thought about this to help me so much.
Yes.
Can you, like, and I wanted to recommend, I literally, one of the people who followed me for a few years reached out to me,
Hmm.
and she wanted to offer her services because she's starting her side business, a teacher,
Uh-huh.
starting her side
Yeah.
business. And she said, I've been following you for years, and like, this makes me like, yes,
Yes.
I do this, because if
Yes.
I can help as many people as I can, I will, so
Yes.
yes, maybe
Yeah.
burnout is not, it's just kind of like, it's the other type of balance. Now we have to kind of like
Yes.
not
Yeah.
overdo
How
it.
do I balance all of my loves, right?
Yes.
I love my work. I love my husband. I love my daughter.
Yes.
I love working out. I love exercise. I love
Yes.
taking care of my home. Like I love all these things. It really is a fine-tuned orchestra of how to make it all work together. And it's hard. And like I said at the beginning of our interview, it's messy. It's not perfect. And I'm constantly learning and messing up and, having to apologize and, but most of the time it's okay. It's just there are these little hiccups along the way. But that's life. Like it's nobody's perfect. Nobody has it all together. But I'm so here for this messy thing we call life and CEO-dom and teaching. Like it all lights me up in so many different ways, and I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what would be your last tip? Okay, so how do you think, we talked a lot about, everything, but what would be like, how can all teachers set up their classrooms and lives for success?
I love this question so much. Number one, I want you to stop and think of just one thing. What is one gift that you can give to yourself in the future? The future could be tomorrow. The future could be next week. What is one thing that you can do today, right now, to set future you up for success? Because if we are really constantly thinking about why we're doing something
Mm-hmm.
and how that's going to help future Amber to be successful,
Yep.
that gives us a reason for doing what we're doing. And if we can't find a reason for doing the thing that we're doing in that moment, we need to start asking ourselves, do I need to do this?
Yes.
Or does this need to be done by me? Like that is the true beginning of you really being intentional with your time and your energy. So for example, I am always number one on my mind this week is, am I planned for next week?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, what do I need to do right now? Even if I don't feel like it,
I know.
because who's going to say thank you to Amber next week when she walks into her classroom after a whole weekend off
Yes.
and everything's ready for Monday? Copies, plans, everything. Who's going to be thankful? Me.
Absolutely. That's such great advice. I
You're welcome.
think in so many cases we just do automatically because
Yep.
that's what we're used to do, but stopping, asking why, and saying, okay, what is one little thing? Maybe that little thing that your future you is going to thank you is close the door and go,
Yep. Yeah.
maybe just like you said.
My favorite quote from Denzel Washington. He says, "Don't confuse movement with progress.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Just because
1,000%.
just because you're doing more doesn't mean you're getting more done."
Yes.
I heard that quote from him. It's one of my favorite. There's like this YouTube video of him giving some speeches and accepting some awards, and he is so wise, and that quote has stuck with me since the day I heard it a few years ago. It's actually in my book and at the beginning of one of my
Oh
chapters.
my gosh. I think we're
Mhm.
going to leave it at that because there's nothing I can say after this.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah. Can you tell our listeners and viewers where they can connect with you?
Yeah. So
Instagram or anywhere?
you can connect with me on any social media platform at Burned In Teacher, one word. You can, of course, go to burnedinteacher.com, where I have a contact page. If you want to contact me, you can listen to the podcast from there. There's a link to take the quiz. And of course, if you have any specific questions as well, you can always email me at support@burnedinteacher.com.
This is awesome. I'm going to link all of this in the show notes and underneath the video. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with all of us. It was a true, true pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, Ayeva. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you loved what you heard today, be sure to do two things. First, make sure to subscribe to the ESL Teaching Podcast so you don't miss an episode. And second, leave a positive review wherever you listen, on iTunes, Spotify, or any other platform. Positive reviews will improve the chances of this podcast to be discovered in the feed and help our fellow ESL, ELL teachers. And of course, there's a third thing. If you aren't following me on social media yet, come join me on Instagram at SimplyYevaESL, Facebook, Simply Yeva, or connect with me on my website, simplyyeva.com. Thanks again, and until next time.